I moved to Hemlock Ridge for peace. That was the whole point. After 15 years in the Dallas PD, 8 of those on the state patrol detail, I was done with late-night pursuits and red-tape politics. I'd earned early retirement at 41, had the pension to back it, and figured I'd earned a quiet little slice of suburbia. So I bought a modest 3-bedroom house on the edge of town. Quiet cul-de-sac, bird song in the mornings, one nosy neighbor. The nosy one turned out to be Karen Sheffield, president of the Hemlock Ridge Homeowners Association. Drop your city below. We want to see how far this story has reached. She showed up 37 minutes after my moving truck pulled in. I hadn't even finished unloading my coffee maker. "Hello!" she sang, stepping onto my driveway like she owned it. She was dressed like she was headed to a power brunch. Heels, white blouse, a clipboard clutched in her perfectly manicured hands. "You must be Mr. Callahan." I nodded, pushing up the sleeves of my old band tour hoodie. "Jack Callahan, yep." "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said. "We're so thrilled to have you join our little community." The way she said it made me want to double-check the locks on my doors. "I brought you the HOA welcome packet." She handed me a thick folder that weighed as much as a law textbook. Rules, fines, forms, guidelines on shrub height and mailbox font. I flipped through it slowly. "This place serious about lawn gnome regulations?" She didn't laugh. "The guidelines ensure harmony." I smiled politely. "I appreciate it, but I won't be joining the HOA. Her smile cracked for just a second. "Oh, it's not optional for residents of Hemlock Ridge." "It is for this address," I replied. "This property was built before the HOA was incorporated. Exempt, I already checked." The clipboard lowered a fraction. "That's unusual," I shrugged. "You'll get used to me." And with that, Karen turned and walked off with the kind of tight-lipped composure that screamed, "This isn't over." I figured that'd be the end of it. A woman with too much time and too many bylaws. I'd dealt with worse. I parked my state-issued patrol motorcycle, standard silver and black cruiser, just off the driveway near the garage and didn't think twice. 2 days later, a slip of paper appeared on my windshield. "Warning! Vehicle must be parked inside the garage or out of view per Hemlock Ridge Regulation 4.7. Below that, in bold, failure to comply will result in escalating fines and enforcement action." I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. The next day, I received a $350 fine in the mail from the HOA, claiming my parked motorcycle was a visual obstruction and community eyesore. I laughed, shook my head, and didn't bother responding. The HOA had no jurisdiction over me. I wasn't a member. Legally, they had as much power over me as a neighborhood bake sale committee, but Karen didn't take rejection well. It was a Thursday morning when it happened. I woke up early, habit, and stepped outside with my coffee. The air was cool, birds chirping. Then I noticed it. My motorcycle was gone. Gone. The kickstand marks were still in the pavement, a faint oil spot, but the cruiser vanished. I walked back inside, pulled up my security camera feed. There it was, 3:14 a.m. A flatbed tow truck, unmarked, rolled into my driveway. A man in dark clothing jumped out, looked around, and started hooking up the cruiser. 30 seconds later, it was on the truck bed. Another figure stood nearby, arms crossed. Karen. She was wearing a robe and slippers, sipping from a wine glass like she was watching late-night entertainment. As the truck pulled away, she raised her glass in a silent toast to the camera. I stared at the footage in disbelief. My police-issued motorcycle, towed from my property, without a warrant, without permission. My hands clenched around the mug until it cracked. They'd just messed with the wrong man. I spent the next 10 minutes pacing my living room, mug shards still in the sink, fury simmering under the surface like lava under cracked asphalt. Karen had just towed a state-owned vehicle, not just any motorcycle either, a law enforcement unit registered under the Texas Department of Public Safety. That wasn't just bold. That was felony bold. I grabbed my phone, dialed the non-emergency line, and got patched through to dispatch. "This is retired Trooper Jack Callahan. I need to report an unauthorized tow of a state vehicle from my private property." There was a beat of silence. Then, "Say again?" I repeated it. 15 minutes later, Officer Leon Martinez, a buddy from my old days, was in my driveway, arms crossed, watching the footage on my phone. His brow arched so high it looked like it might pop off his forehead. "You've got to be kidding me," he said. "That's Karen Sheffield, isn't it? The queen of lawn conformity herself. She had it towed at 3 in the morning? With a private tow truck. No plate, no paperwork, no notice. Just rolled in and hooked it like she was repoing a stolen Civic." Martinez let out a low whistle. "You sure your property's exempt from HOA?" "Positive. Title deed confirms it. I even showed it to her when I moved in." He ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, this is big, really big. That's grand theft auto, illegal towing, trespassing, tampering with state property, and impersonation of authority if she presented herself as having legal jurisdiction." I nodded. "And don't forget harassment. This started with warning notes and fake fines. I didn't budge, so she escalated." Martinez snapped a few photos of the driveway. "You want to press charges?" "Oh, I'm going to do a lot more than that," I said. "But first, I need my cruiser back." That afternoon, we tracked the tow company down. It took 2 phone calls and a bit of persuasion from Martinez, but eventually we got a name. Terry's Auto Recovery, an outfit 2 towns over known for off-the-books jobs. We drove over in Martinez's cruiser. Terry was a wiry man with a patchy beard and nervous eyes. When I walked in and asked for the silver and black Harley-Davidson assigned to the Texas State Police, he blanched. "Look, man," he said, palms up, "I got a call from a woman who said she was authorized by the HOA to have it removed. I didn't ask questions." "You towed a law enforcement vehicle from private property without checking a single piece of paperwork?" I asked, barely keeping my voice in check. "She paid double the normal rate in cash," he said weakly. Martinez was already pulling out his citation pad. "We're going to need a copy of the tow log, all camera footage from your lot, and the name of the driver. Right now." Terry practically tripped over himself getting it. By 4 p.m., I was riding my cruiser back into my driveway. The tires had been scuffed and the front plate was dented from where it had been strapped improperly. Nothing irreplaceable. But that wasn't the point. The point was that Karen had crossed a line. As I shut off the engine, I looked across the street. There she was. Karen stood by her hedges, chatting with 2 other board members. David Chalmers, the bald one with a Napoleon complex, and that stone-faced woman, Marcy, who ran the newsletter like it was the Wall Street Journal. Karen spotted me and froze mid-laugh. Her wine glass clinked against her teeth. I dismounted slowly, removed my gloves, and walked across the street with the calm, deliberate stride of a man who used to break up drug stings in South Dallas. All 3 of them went dead quiet. "Lovely day, isn't it?" I said cheerfully. "Thought I'd come over and thank you personally for the towing service." David swallowed hard. Marcy blinked 3 times. Karen, to her credit, found her voice first. "Mr. Callahan, if your vehicle had been parked appropriately, this wouldn't have been necessary. The board has rules." I smiled and pulled something from my jacket pocket. My badge, not my police badge, though that was coming soon. This one was a court order. A restraining notice filed under Texas Civil Code Section 30:07, restricting any HOA member from contacting or approaching me or my property until the investigation concluded. Karen stared at the paper like it had teeth. "You've got to be kidding," she said. "I never kid," I replied, tucking the paper back into my pocket. "Now here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, a formal report will be filed with the county sheriff and the Texas Attorney General's office. Your little HOA just committed a criminal offense against the state." Marcy opened her mouth like she wanted to speak, then shut it again. Karen's cheeks turned blotchy. "You don't scare me." I leaned in just a bit, lowering my voice so only the 3 of them could hear. "Good, because fear won't help you now. You'll want a lawyer, a real one, not your cousin who did traffic tickets in the 90s. Then I turned and walked away, leaving them staring after me like they'd just watched a ghost walk out of a grave. They thought the HOA gave them power. They forgot what happens when you mess with someone who enforces the law for a living. By Friday morning, Hemlock Ridge had become a powder keg with a lit fuse, and I was the one holding the match. I spent the night preparing. I had security cam footage from the illegal tow, copies of the fake fine notices, a signed affidavit from the tow truck operator who had agreed, quite eagerly, to provide testimony in exchange for leniency, I even printed out the HOA bylaws from their own website and highlighted the parts that explicitly stated their authority only extended to participating homeowners. My name wasn't on the member roster. Not now, not ever. At 10 a.m., I made my way down to the Hemlock Ridge Community Center, where the monthly HOA meeting was held in a room that looked like a country club ballroom but reeked of white wine and entitlement. The room was already filling up, residents in pastel polos and yoga pants, all murmuring about the incident. Some of them still didn't believe what Karen had done. Others looked cautiously hopeful that someone was finally standing up to her. Karen stood at the podium, flanked by her loyalists. Her blonde bob was sprayed into submission, her lips pursed, her pearls gleaming. She was mid-speech, talking about preserving the prestige of Hemlock Ridge when she saw me walk in. Her voice caught. I walked straight to the front, handed a thick envelope to her, then another to the secretary beside her. Karen blinked. "What's this?" I leaned on the podium, speaking just loud enough for the mic to catch. "Formal complaint to the County Board of Ethics. State-level charge submission for unlawful seizure of state property, harassment, and civil violation of property rights. Oh, and you're being personally sued for damages." The crowd gasped. David Chalmers stood up. "This is outrageous. You can't sue the HOA." "I'm not suing the HOA," I said, smiling. "I'm suing you, David, and Karen and Marcy, individually, for personal misconduct. That motorcycle belongs to the state of Texas, and y'all towed it without authorization. That's not an HOA violation. That's a felony." Karen's hands shook, but she kept her voice steady. "You're twisting things. We were enforcing community aesthetics." "You were enforcing control," I said, "on someone who wasn't even part of your HOA. Someone in the audience muttered, "Wait, he's not in the HOA? Another voice, "He's exempt? How many other homes are exempt?" You could feel the shift in the room, like someone had changed the wind. Karen tried to regain control. "We will address Mr. Callahan's claims in executive session. As for now, I remind all residents that parking violations remain—" "No," I cut in. "See, I talked to the county attorney this morning, and I've got news for you. There is no executive session, not anymore." The double doors swung open behind me. In walked Officer Martinez and two plainclothes detectives from the state office. They moved with purpose, calm, quiet, and unshakable. Karen's face turned to chalk. "Karen Sheffield," one detective said, "we need you to come with us. You're being investigated for unlawful seizure of state property and operating beyond authorized jurisdiction." David and Marcy looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. Karen stared at the audience like she was waiting for someone, anyone, to defend her. No one stood. "You don't have to do this," she snapped at the officers. "No," Martinez replied, "but we get to." They escorted her out. The room erupted. The following Monday, I was asked to speak at a special session of the Hemlock Ridge Community Board. What was left of it? Residents had questions. They were angry, embarrassed, and more than a little humiliated. For years, they'd accepted Karen's authority like gospel. Turns out, she'd built a kingdom on sand. I kept it simple. "You have every right to enjoy your neighborhood," I told them. "But that right stops where someone else's begins." Karen forgot that. She thought the HOA made her the law. People nodded. Some clapped. By the end of the week, 7 more homeowners came forward with complaints, stories about citations for wind chimes, holiday wreaths, driveway cracks, fines for living. It was a dam bursting, and once it started, it couldn't be stopped. The county issued a formal audit of the HOA's financial records. What they found? Let's just say Karen had been dipping into the Landscaping Improvement Fund to pay for spa days, catered meetings, and a suspicious travel stipend for her yearly vacation to Aspen. They froze the HOA account that same day. And the worst part for them? That was only the beginning. By the following week, Hemlock Ridge had flipped on its head. Karen's arrest was all over the local news. A few clips from the HOA meeting, including the moment the detectives walked in and Karen tried to argue her innocence, made it onto YouTube and started gaining traction under the video title, "Suburban HOA President Arrested for Towing State Trooper's Motorcycle." But behind the viral headlines, the neighborhood was in chaos. Not the kind with pitchforks and torches, more like silent lawnmower revolts and front porch mutinies. People who had tiptoed around Karen's rules were now leaving their trash cans out on purpose, stringing up American flags that didn't match the approved color palette, and, gasp, planting wildflowers. I'd never seen so many rebellious bird feeders in my life. David Chalmers and Marcy tried to maintain the illusion of control. They sent out an emergency bulletin with official-looking clip art that read, "Despite recent events, the Hemlock Ridge HOA remains a strong and united organization. We ask all residents to continue adhering to community guidelines." The next day, someone taped a giant sign to the front of the community center. "Guidelines are for clubs. This isn't a club, it's our homes." Meanwhile, the financial audit uncovered a gold mine of HOA misconduct. Karen and the board had been collecting a $150 community maintenance fee from every household, supposedly for streetlight repairs and trail maintenance. But the lights hadn't worked in 2 years, and the trail was a patch of dry grass behind the tennis courts. Turns out most of the money had been funneled into a separate LLC, HR Lifestyle Services, registered under Marcy's husband's name. They'd been using community funds to pay for private expenses, landscaping their own homes, replacing furniture in the board meeting room, even hosting catered wine tastings that, coincidentally, only included their circle of friends. The paper trail was airtight, and I made sure copies of every document landed in the inbox of the County Ethics Committee, the State Attorney's Office, and, just for fun, our local news anchor, who had a flair for the dramatic. The following night, Channel 8 led with "Ho Gone Rogue," Hemlock Ridge Board members accused of embezzlement, fraud, and targeted harassment. The next day, David and Marcy resigned. No apology, no explanation. Just a shaky email that said, "We feel it's in the best interest of the community if we step aside during this difficult time." They had no idea how right they were. A special meeting was called to vote on the fate of the HOA. It was packed, folding chairs, standing room only. Some folks brought snacks. One woman, Mrs. Delgado, wore a T-shirt that said, "Troopers, Karens." I stood quietly at the back while a young mom who'd once been fined $100 for sidewalk chalk took the mic. "My daughter cried when she saw the violation notice," she said. "I tried to explain it wasn't her fault, but how do you explain something like that to a 6-year-old? Her voice cracked. "I'm tired of living in fear of my neighbors. I vote we dissolve the HOA." The motion passed by an overwhelming majority, 86 votes to 4. Just like that, the Hemlock Ridge HOA was officially disbanded. People cried. People hugged. Someone brought out a speaker and started blasting Johnny Cash. It was messy and imperfect and wonderful. The best part? They asked me to stay. Not as a leader, not as some new enforcer, just as a neighbor. The kind who knows when to hold a line and when to help build a fence. I agreed. But first, I had a final errand to run. Karen's court date was scheduled for a month later. I showed up in a dark gray polo and jeans, seated quietly in the back row. She walked in wearing a navy blazer and the same pearls she wore the day she tried to toast my motorcycle being towed. She looked older now, tired. The courtroom wasn't filled with supporters, just a few lawyers, a board reporter, and me. The judge didn't take long. Charges of unlawful seizure of state property, civil rights violations, and fraud were accepted for trial. Her attorney attempted to spin it, claimed it was all a miscommunication. The judge leaned forward and said, "You committed a felony while sipping wine on camera. This isn't a misunderstanding, Miss Sheffield. It's arrogance, and it ends now." Karen didn't look at me as she left the courtroom, but I sure as hell looked at her, because the war she started to control a neighborhood had just cost her everything, and it wasn't even over yet. 2 months after the HOA's collapse, Hemlock Ridge was unrecognizable, and for once, in the best way possible. Gone were the citation slips stuffed into mailboxes. Gone were the anonymous neighbor concern complaints about wind chimes, patriotic flags, or having a trampoline in the backyard. The self-appointed suburban enforcers had either lawyered up, moved out, or learned the hard way that nobody mourns the fall of a tyrant in a pantsuit. In their place, block parties, community gardens, actual neighbors getting to know each other. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. We turned the old HOA office into something that actually benefited people, a multi-purpose community space. The same room where Karen once issued $75 fines for overly reflective solar lights now hosted yoga on Mondays and movie nights on Fridays. The old board table? We turned that into a picnic table, dragged it outside, and painted it bright red. Someone carved "Ho Free Since 24" into one corner. I smiled every time I saw it. The funniest part? We named the new community group Hemlock Neighbors United. Voluntary, donation-based, no fines, no drama, and zero tolerance for power trips. We had bylaws, sure, but they were 3 pages long, written in plain English, and the first line read, "No person in this neighborhood shall have authority over another's bird feeders, porch flags, or the location of their garden gnome." It was beautiful. As for Karen, the case moved quickly. Between the financial records, the tow truck affidavit, and the footage of her standing in her bathrobe smirking while my motorcycle disappeared, her legal team had little room to maneuver. She pled down on the theft charges, got 18 months probation, a $25,000 fine, and was barred from serving on any neighborhood board for life. That part made me laugh. The fraud and misuse of funds charges stuck harder. Marcy and David each got slapped with restitution orders. They'd have to repay tens of thousands in stolen community improvement money. David tried to file for bankruptcy, but the judge wasn't having it. The cherry on top? Karen had to write a public apology letter, court-ordered, to every household in Hemlock Ridge. The letter arrived in the mail one sunny Wednesday afternoon. The first annual Freedom from Fines BBQ was a hit. Dozens of families filled the community park. Someone even brought fireworks. Officer Martinez showed up with his family, flipped burgers like a pro, and recounted the time he had to wrestle a drunk streaker during a 4th of July parade. Kids screamed with laughter. I stood by the smoker, drink in hand, watching it all unfold. The easy smiles, the lack of tension, the way people waved at each other without suspicion. That was what Karen never understood.